bring you some huge breaking news at this moment, and it has been confirmed in the last couple of seconds that Gareth Southgate will step down as England manager after defeat in the Euro 2024 final to Spain. He said he would go away and speak to the important people.
So, it's finally happened. Congratulations, you trolls and armchair critics. You got what you wanted. Gareth Southgate's tenure as England manager is over. And I guess it's not the most surprising news. This year, he did say that Gareth did indicate that there were signs that that Euro 2024 was going to be his last tournament for England, and his final game for England was, at least I guess you could say his final game for England manager was that Euro 2024 final. And then I guess, how many managers can claim that, to be perfectly honest? I think in years to come, I think Gareth Southgate will be looked on more favorably. I think, and first you got to look at the stats. Obviously, certainly the best, certainly in terms of tournament performances, the best manager England's had. I'm just looking at this, according to the stat from Sky Sports. Gareth Southgate has a 54% win record as an England manager at any major tournament, second only to Alf Ramsey. And speaking about Sir Alf Ramsey, of course, I think there's always going to be the tendency to compare any single England manager to Ramsey, because he's the only one who's won a tournament for England. But I think, which is very arbitrary and certainly unfair, because Sir Alf Ramsey was coaching in the football was different in the 1950s, 1960s. The game was much slower. It was less professional than it is today. The body shapes and all that, the expectations, the money, of course. The fact there were less countries, there was still the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Germany. There were two Germanys. There was still Yugoslavia. A lot of the African nations were still colonized by European powers. That sort of thing. Look, it's a different time, and I think to compare anyone, including Southgate and Ramsey, is just it's just nonsense. But as a modern manager, I think we're looking at at the whole tenure. Capello stands out. He's the most certainly taking out Ramsey in the last 40 years. Capello stands out as the most successful manager at 67%. Of course, his tenure was a bit shorter than probably most England fans would hope. Glenn Hoddle, surprisingly, 61%. And Ron Greenwood, 60%, are the only two. Ron Greenwood and Glenn Hoddle, the only two managers with who can match Gareth Southgate's record for winning record. Southgate did draw a lot more matches. Sven-Göran Eriksson, another well-known manager who most contemporary England fans would know. Sven-Göran Eriksson, 60%, and then you look down. Roy Hodgson's 59%. McLaren actually has the same 50, and the late Sir Bobby Robson, 50%. Don Revie, 48%. Terry Venables, who of course was manager of England at Euro 96, 48%. And only 1% ahead of Graham Taylor, and Kevin Keegan was 39%. We're not going to, and of course, as we know, Sam Allardyce is the 100% record, but that's an aberration. But so in context, look, he's done all right. He's in the top five. I think. Look, I get, obviously there's football is a subjective matter. There's always more than stats. But look, I guess I think looking back, Gareth Southgate's tenure in England, was probably one of the most important in English football history. You've got to remember at a time when Gareth Southgate came in, English football was sort of nadir. They just lost to they'd just been knocked out of Iceland at Euro 2016. Roy Hodgson quit. They got in Sam Allardyce, and then he only managed one game which he won. And then there came all these allegations about that you did of him overstepping the mark as his professional marks. Talking to like bookmakers and all that, and I guess the English FA at the time was in a really bad shape, because, of course, they knew Sam Allardyce had always had a bit of a shady past. And I'm not saying he's not the only one. Like, I mean, we've had in the past, and you've had many former England managers have been involved in shady dealings in the past. But it just kind of in this age where, in the public scrutiny, in this age where nothing's really hidden. It was just incredulous that England just the FA did not do their due diligence and went ahead and picked Sam Allardyce on despite all the red flags around. And then so Gareth Southgate came in. That was really as a caretaker, and no one was really expecting much, certainly from Russia 2018. But they went on to finish fourth, and they made it to semi-finals. They only missed out on the World Cup final in extra time to Croatia. Look, I get, I get maybe the route was a bit easier than what France had to go through. But at the end of the day, you play with what you're drawn to. You play with what you've got, and England did everything they did. Euro 2021, look, they had, they made the final. Probably, I think, arguably now that was probably England's best chance to win something, and they probably should have when it was at Wembley. I know the environment around that game was not great, but yeah, again, making a final, that was England's first final appearance at a final in a major tournament since 1966. And and then of course 2022, Qatar, they only lost out to France, who made actually drew the World Cup final. Only weren't world champions because of penalties, and so that's and I guess right at the time Gareth Southgate didn't really escaped sort of the criticism that many might have had in the past. And then Euro 2024 made the final, and I think, look, arguably Spain was the better team. England kind of, there is no doubt England hobbled their way to the final, and certainly they were helped by an easier draw. But look, on the other flip side, I guess they got to the final, and Germany didn't, Italy didn't, Belgium didn't. Lots of other teams didn't, and so look, I get the football was Gareth. There's no denying, and Gareth Southgate will admit this to himself. He is not a tactical mind. He does not have a philosophy on playing, just like Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, Ralf Rangnick. But in international football, you don't really need that. You only see the players like 4 or 5 times a year. You only get in total 3 months at most with the players. I think it's probably much far less than that. I think 3 months is a bit of an exaggeration, sorry. So it is impossible to impose some sort of tactics. I think the thing with Ralf Rangnick in Austria, I guess it's a smaller team, it's a small nation, the low expectation they have, and they are able to get the players more often. And plus, a lot of those Austrian players play at Red Bull clubs, so they know what Ralf Rangnick is all about. I guess, so Gareth Southgate did the best he could. He has always been a good manager, and that's what he excelled. And I guess the time now is that, perhaps England needs to look at someone more tactically minded. I mean, I had talked about Steve Holland, who is the brains, really much, perhaps arguably is the brains behind England's success, although there is the word, with Ben White. So maybe, and I think certainly wanting to carry on from, they might want a clean break. So let's talk about Eddie Howe. Let's talk about, Graham Potter seems like the most convenient person to because he's not in a job at the moment. And Graham Potter's done, by and large, could be the right person because he's a bit of a player motivator and has a little bit of a better tactical nous than Gareth Southgate, perhaps. Although I guess there would be question marks on how he can deal with stars because he didn't seem to do that with Chelsea. Although it is Chelsea under the Bowley era, so there'll always be. I mean, Eddie Howe's going to be treated prior at Newcastle. And then there's always Maurizio Pochettino as well, who seems to be more English than Argentinian. So look, there's going to be an interesting time because of course they've got the Nations League and World Cup qualifiers to come. So I imagine a decision will be made in the coming weeks. If maybe Holland might be interim, maybe caretaker for the Nations League. I'm not sure what friendlies England have in the coming months, but. Yeah, but look, so it's likely they'll have a caretaker at some stage, but we shall see. But look, diverging from the subject, yeah, I think in defense, Gareth Southgate, in years to come, I think people are going to look more positively at Gareth Southgate and what he achieved, certainly in the first part. Perhaps he held on a bit too long. I guess, maybe he's in the same boat as like someone like Jurgi Low, who probably clung onto the German job too long. Maybe even Vicente Del Bosque, like someone who, managed Spain, won the World Cup, won the Euros with Spain, but perhaps maybe, I guess evidence at 2014 was perhaps carried, by two generational talents in Xavi, Andres Iniesta, who, when they were off their peak in 2014, Spain just absolutely collapsed. So I think there is a bit of both. It's complex. But at the end of the day, I think Gareth Southgate reign as England manager should be looked upon in a generally positive light, and I think people who have made the comments during this Euros in the last couple of years will look back and regret some of what they've said. And look, I think Gareth Southgate deserves a long break from football. I don't know if you ever go back to club management, certainly not to Borough, because I think maybe even something else. I think he take a break from football, but certainly he deserves to break as long as he wants. A bit like Jurgen Klopp, maybe they could hang out at the same Marbella resort. But what are your thoughts on Gareth Southgate's reign? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments, and please keep them respectful. If you like this video, feel free to like, and don't forget to subscribe.